much for inviting us here today. We've actually been through, I think, every single district council now, bar Stratford, who's still to come. The slides that we produce for each individual district council, borough council, have got stats that particularly pertain to your area. So that bit is unique, if you like, to Nuneaton and Bedworth. The other parts of these slides we've actually given to the other councils as well. The other thing to say is that we produced the slides in, was it early March?
Yeah.
Looking at Dave, early March. So actually there has been a few things that have happened since then, not least the general election. So when we go across things that are a bit out of date, we'll try and pick those up and explain where we think things have moved on. Neither Dave or I are actually here to specifically represent our own local authorities because we've been doing this on behalf of the kind of the whole the sub-region. However, I'm happy to answer questions about Coventry, and I imagine Dave's happy to answer questions about the county if you want to ask them. So I'm also conscious that it's a heavy subject. We've got quite a few slides. I'll try not to dwell where I really don't think we need to dwell on them, but clearly
Thank you, Dave. There's nobody raising any questions whilst the presentation was going on. Has anybody got a burning question? And it has to be a question, we're not into debate yet, so anybody got a burning question for clarification or something in their own mind? I thought I'd hand it over there. Keith, you first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Can you clarify what Coventry's doing? Because it was reported they want to go with Birmingham.
The question on the presentation. Councillor Hawks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was interested in the business enterprise setups. I'm just wondering whether there's any statistics on how long those enterprises last. I'm thinking of the quick pop-up coffee shop in the tourist trap which disappears after a season. And the other point is the comparison between us and France with productivity. With the information that was given, the thought struck me that perhaps the skin on our grapes is thicker than the French grapes, so it takes longer for us to tread up. Because that's the information we got.
I mean, in terms of business survival rates, which I think you can have enterprise set up, and some areas can be very good at setting them up, but they can be quite short-lived. Survival rates are actually fairly common across most areas. So the 3-year survival rate, which is the area, the time period we generally look at, is around 70%. Most places in the country we look at. There is a huge variation in business survival rates. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Councillor Doherty.
I just wanted to ask, could you just explain a bit more about when you were talking about how you could be, the county council can be in two, but a borough, have I got that right?
yes, that's right.
County council can be in two combined authority areas.
Yeah.
However, a borough has to be in one because you're an area.
So it's physical land. So
Yeah.
where I'm sitting here in this room, this can only be in one combined authority. But clearly, a county council can cover more than one district or borough council. So you could have half of the. So Derbyshire is an example where some of the Derbyshire districts are currently as part of the Sheffield City region, but some of them aren't. Now the legislation is currently being changed, I think, to facilitate some of that better. But at the moment, but certainly a county, because obviously the county has different functions. So some of the functions that are being talked about for combined authorities around transport and economic development, and those kind of functions are held at a county level. So if the district joins a local combined authority, the county would come too for that part of the area.
So a county would have to say discharge its transport functions in one area, but might be in combined authority A, but also need to discharge its transport functions in another area, which may be in combined authority B. So the county would have a role in two combined authorities.
Councillor Harvey.
I presently represent Nuneaton and Bedworth on the Shadow Economic Prosperity Board, where I have one vote and each authority has one vote, regardless of the size of the population of that authority. Is that the case in a combined authority?
I think it can be, yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Three very brief questions. First of all, if we were to have a Boris-like Metro Mayor, who would choose the Mayor? Second of all, in relation to the statistics about startups, I just wonder what your feeling was about the background to that, because obviously Warwick and Stratford seem to suck all the resources from the statistics, hence us having low startup rates here. I wondered what impact that would have in a larger authority. And finally, is just in relation to taking on new services. Would this be new money, or would it just be the government handing underfunded services over to us, and us having to run services that aren't funded properly? Thank you.
Right. Which one do you want to answer? Do you want to do the business? So I'll do the next. I'll do the So the deal with the elected mayors, I understand, and obviously we're waiting to see what comes on the city devolution bill, is every resident that is in the area covered by a metro mayor gets a vote. So it'll be one person, one vote, whole area. I've not read anything that would imply it would be different to that. The question about the difficult question.
Would it be new funding?
Oh, new funding. Hey, it's not my job to be political, but there's less money to go around. I've never yet seen anything passed in local government that didn't have some money to stop it. Sorry, that was very excited. Whatever the party. I think the main idea would be functions that come down, whether there'd be as much money remains to be seen. But actually, certainly, it's something that Greater Manchester is feeling confident enough to take on, because they're taking on £6 billion of health and social care budget to manage across a piece, and that is a really big change. So I mean, and I think personally it's very brave, because actually that's a big thing to be looking at. So I think it's kind of all up for grabs, but I guess the cynic in me would always say, and one of the things that I have heard argued is with the increasing reduction in local authority budgets, which is going to carry on, it's only through growth and increased business rates and increased council tax that local authorities are going to be able to carry on running some of the services they run. And actually, it's only through command authorities and some of the infrastructure and investments that have economic growth, because they're all about economic growth, that you can actually raise enough money to then continue to. So it's that whole issue of local authority funding, really. So it's not a straight answer.
Yeah, I think it's the ability to gain control over locally raised sources of income, like business rates. I think that's it's not new money. There's new money. Would be new money to accept.
And there's a risk about equalisation as well, isn't there? Because if you're raising your own money, then if you don't raise it, you haven't got it.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There was the presentation, that there's some sort of theory that we've all got to be continuous borders. Although the Solihull part of it was only mentioned as part of the sub-regional programme, which has been abandoned since then. You haven't mentioned Solihull as part of any particular agreement that we might do in the future.
So Solihull, my understanding is they haven't formally said which way they want to go. They are currently part of the Greater Birmingham Solihull LEP, but they haven't signed up at the moment to the Black Country and Birmingham proposals for a combined authority, but they're thinking about it. Under the current rules, well, this is quite interesting, under the current rules, if Solihull don't go into it, because you have to be contiguous, I don't know how much you can, because we only join on to the West Midlands through Solihull. The government is looking at changing those rules, because I explained about York, because York wants to join in with West Yorkshire and that bit of North Yorkshire doesn't want to, so the rules will be changed. But under the current rules, Coventry could only be a member if, and that would be true of all the district councils as well. Your neighbour would need to be a member, he'd need to be joining on to something, because that's the current rules. But they are that legislation hasn't been changed, but there are proposals to change it. But yes, it's not my position to comment on Solihull's decision, but it is absolutely crucial for if Coventry wanted to join go west.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just thinking about the direct elected mayor and how that's envisaged to work. I was wondering how he or she would be held accountable between elections, because Boris, like now in London, he's held accountable by the London Assembly, which obviously is a separately elected institution. I was just wondering how it's going to be envisaged to work under these systems. I mean, will it just be held accountable by the people, like the leaders of the councils on that, such as held accountable some other way between elections?
That's a really good question. I can't give a definitive answer, but I think certainly with the other combined authorities, the government has insisted that there be a scrutiny function that holds them to account, which is made up of councillors from the constituent local authorities. So that's happening for Greater Manchester. There was a scrutiny function to do that. I would imagine they would have to do something similar. And the elected mayor is the chair of the combined authority. The combined authority still includes all the leaders of the council. So you still, so if you have the metro mayor, the metro mayor is part of the combined authority, as are all the leaders from all the constituent councils. So it's kind of a first amongst equals. So I would imagine, as the combined authority is currently held to account by scrutiny of the local authorities, it would be the same for next time.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Dave. At this point, we're going to suggest having a 5-minute comfort break if anybody needs one. Anybody need to? Or should we just carry straight on?
I move we have a break.
I'm sorry. Have a 5-minute comfort break. Thank you.